Hey, Fabiola. Hey,
What?
Fabiola.
What?
The fuck did I just watch? What the fuck did I just watch?
James Gunn's screenwriting debut.
You said this, you think this is the best adaptation of Romeo and Juliet?
Yes.
Which adaptations of Romeo and Juliet have you seen?
I've seen the Baz Luhrmann one. I've seen parts of the one from the 60s. I've seen the relatively newer one with Haley Steinfeld. I've seen Romeo and Juliet.
Okay, you've seen more than me. You've seen more than me. But yeah, I mean the okay. I don't hate it. I think there's a lot. I think it's very, very interesting. And there's a lot of like stuff that I'm like, ooh, I like what they're doing, and I like what's doing. As an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, I think it's I mean the thing with all Shakespeare is that you can kind of fit it in whatever you can focus on themes and like what themes you want to discuss in which like in however way you want to cut the script or like do an adaptation of. You can kind of do whatever you want because there is always so much in the text, but this changes a lot of things about the original text in a way that is I don't have a word for it. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. This adaptation is Tromeo and Juliet from
Yeah.
1996.
I got it right. So how did this get made? What is the origin of this?
It's a film from Troma Studios, which is maybe the biggest niche film production and distribution company held by Lloyd Kaufman, who has had cameos in every James Gunn movie, and so has the guy playing Benvolio. He is also in all of them, I think.
But okay, what kind of films do they make? I don't know anything about this studio or
a lot of like schlocky nonsense. Their most famous one is Toxic Avenger, which it's basically like a monster superhero thing.
So they make a lot of horny, goopy, gory mess.
Yes.
Which is what this film is. This film is so I mean, would you say it's sleazy?
Yeah.
Because we've talked in the past about how the camp of sleaze.
Yeah, and I covered this film for my special study and I put it under good bad taste. Like that's the specific camp category that I'd put this in.
Well, so then what is your definition of good bad taste?
Just things that are kind of trashy and nonsensey.
But you enjoy?
Yeah.
Or is there like more to qualify what is quote unquote good?
Good is really subjective.
Yeah. I mean, this does seem to be a well thought out like this is a well constructed film.
Yeah. Because like there's a lot of nonsense out there that does not have that much to discuss.
Yeah.
But these types of movies do.
Because it does feel like it is doing something.
Yes.
It feels very intentional in its mess.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, the closest this film, of all the other stuff we've watched before, the film I'd compare it the most to is John Waters and Female Trouble.
Yeah, we might get like yelled at for comparing James Gunn to John Waters.
Wait, why do you think we'd get yelled at?
Because he's like the superhero guy now. He's in charge of DC now.
Yeah, but also like this film is that. Like
Yeah.
this film is, I mean, there's elements of, I see Suicide
Yes.
Squad in this, the Suicide Squad in this
Yeah.
film. Though this film is even more because it's not DC. It's
Yeah.
But also, so who is the director? Because it's James Gunn wrote it.
It's Lloyd Kaufman, but also I'm pretty sure James did direct at least a few scenes because it's like a small, messy studio. So inevitably, what often happens with small productions is people take on various hats randomly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, should we explain how this is an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet?
Yes. So it's similar to the Baz Luhrmann one in the sense that it's set in the present day and a
Present of
modern
the
setting.
90s.
Yeah.
And it's in Manhattan.
Yeah. Although I think the Baz Luhrmann one was set in Venice Beach.
Oh, yeah, it was. Because Rona,
Yeah.
Venice. But yeah, I mean, this is like, it's New York.
Yes.
In Tromeo and Juliet. Except, so the way it does the rivalry is, so it's the, instead of the Montagues, it's Monty, right? They're not, it's not actually,
their last name is just Q.
yeah. So Tromeo, not Romeo, Tromeo's dad is Monty Q.
Yes.
So I guess his last name is Q, and he does, it's Benvolio is Benny, and Mercutio is Murray,
Yeah.
who's just a friend of theirs. And it's set up that the Capulets, who they do the Juliet's dad, they call him Cap, I guess, which is short for Capulet. He stole Monty's business.
Yeah, the business being a porn production company.
Yeah. And, or well, not stole, but like basically there was
bought through blackmail.
Yeah. And so that's where the rivalry comes from. And it doesn't even seem that like the Capulets are very well off like they are, because they throw a big party
compared to the Qs at the present moment.
Yeah, but they aren't like, they're all kind of scummy. Like there isn't a lot of class that these characters have. And well, at what point do we bring up what the twist is in this film?
I don't know. I feel like I'd like to now refer to my supplementary material.
Okay.
Which is a blog post by John King, who is a writer for the Shakespeare Bulletin. Ooh, so he knows Shakespeare. And from what I wrote in my special study was, from the very beginning, he declares that Tromeo and Juliet is one of the best film adaptations of any Shakespearean work of all time. King argues that the film is deeply invested in the, quote, need to repress awareness of our own desires and our own need to wield tyrannical control over our children's desires, which is very much in line with the themes and conflict of the original text. The problem is not that Romeo and Juliet are in love, it's that they're not allowed to be in love as a result of pre-established dynamics they have no say in. Tromeo and Juliet adds to this conflict an atmosphere and tone that, quote, comes off as a surrealistic nightmare of puritanical America, which increases the layers and meanings of an already layered text. King writes that the changes to the original script and the overall aesthetic of the film do not feel arbitrary or come off as an attempt to make Shakespeare appealing to teenage audiences, but they feel wholly committed to imbuing the text with seediness and genuinely want to seek out and elevate the uncomfortable aspects of the tale that most people pay little attention to. The indulgence in the culturally uncomfortable and subversive is what good bad taste camp is all about.
Yeah. I definitely, okay, I definitely agree that this adaptation is absolutely focused on Romeo and Juliet being a story of repressed desire. And I think that is completely a real interpretation of the text of Romeo and Juliet. And they take that and they push it to the absolute extreme. I am I don't even consider myself a huge Shakespeare nerd, but there was just a couple of
But I
tiny
feel like
things
you
in
know a
here
bit
that,
more than me.
well, I was in a production of
Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet like forever ago. There's just a couple of little things that like just bug me that I just need to get. I just need to say to get out of the way before we get into the meat. One, they do the freaking thing. They everyone gets it wrong, but it's such a cliche of getting it wrong at this point. You should know not to get it wrong. That saying "Wherefore art
Oh
thou,
yeah,
Romeo?"
that
That's not. It doesn't mean where are you. That
it
means
means who.
no, it
It's like,
means why.
oh.
Why are you Romeo? Because in
Mm,
that speech that Julia gets, like, why is your name Romeo? That's the name of my enemy. Like, and then goes on, like, but a rose, if any other name would smell as sweet. Like, but they've had this freaking, like, they have Monty be like, wherefore art thou Tromeo? As he's, like, drunk on the floor looking for his son. Also, I'm gonna say up top, hated the way they treated Monty. It felt really uncomfortable that the only black character is this like drunk character that they have farting all the time. It was
yeah.
really weird. I didn't like that. That was weird. Also, I don't like how they treated Rosalind or Rosie. Because that's another thing that I find, like, literally just watched a TikTok about this recently. I don't know how it came up on my For You page. I guess I like enough nerdy shit that Shakespeare stuff comes up on my For You page. But I saw this TikTok talking about one of the aspects of Romeo and Juliet. Rosalind is never seen in the play. Like, she is talked about, but you never see her. At least I don't think in some original scripts. And like it depends on how people stage it, but like she's not usually seen. And Rosalind is supposed to be a character to show how Romeo's a fuckboy. Like he's talking about how he's in love with Rosalind, he's in love with Rosalind. And then he meets Juliet, like, oh, I'm in love with Juliet, I'm in love with Juliet. So to make like in this film Rosie like being like cheating on Romeo, I felt like that undermined that characterization of Romeo to have him kind of be this like fuckboy pursuing people, because it gives him like a valid reason to then be like, oh, now I'm going after Juliet. Um
Yeah, in the movie it feels more like he's in love with love.
yeah. Which like I think that that's fair to play Romeo that way and be like, oh, he's in love with love and he does fall in love with Juliet, or like the idea of Juliet, and he gets, consumed by her. But I just feel like it kind of weakens that argument to kind of to show Rosalind in that way. Anyway, other than that, I've got my complaints out. I was gonna say up top that I didn't think they made Murray gay enough, except then they did. So, because Mercutio is like the gay icon. Like, there's so many Shakespeare characters that are like so queer, but like Mercutio has always been that character. But
He
yeah,
asked Romeo for a kiss.
yeah, and then after when he died, they're like, I didn't know that he was, F slur. And you know what? Like, I'll take that rep. Also, okay, if we're talking about gay people, what they did with the nurse making her Ness this sexy young lesbian, also fascinating. Like, I'm not opposed to what they did there. That was
She's
some
like a live-in babysitter,
that was babysit. I mean,
but a contemporaneous babysitter.
she is fucking Juliet.
Yes.
But like, okay, this is another thing that like, I mean, I guess the whole film is very like, the whole film is just big, crazy, extravagant sleaze. Everything is extreme, and all of the sexuality is like the most extreme it could be. And so that does make the depictions of lesbian sex feel a little more fetishist. I can never say fetishist. Fetish.
Fetishistic.
Yes, thank you. But they also didn't make, they didn't like the, so okay, they had Ness, this character who's the nurse role. She is like, she is pretty sympathetic and interesting because basically like, you know, she's kind of,
They very much parallel her to Romeo.
yeah, and like using her to kind of be a way to examine Juliet's sexuality in terms of like Juliet is this is the heart of the film, I think. This examination of Juliet's like innocence versus her sexuality in the sense that she is presented to be a sexual being while simultaneously being an innocent and pure and virtuous because she only has, before she meets Romeo, Tromeo, I'm gonna call him
Same
Romeo.
thing, same
Yeah,
thing.
she only is shown having sex with Ness, with this woman, and she's having nightmares about, like, she has a nightmare about a penis monster. Like there
Yeah.
is this,
And that clip like made the rounds on Tumblr like 5 years ago, I think.
oh,
That's what I
interesting.
remember that clip from. I associate that clip from randomly popping in Tumblr.
But it's like, and then she also has a nightmare about getting pregnant. There is this like, I feel like I don't quite have all of the terminology to unpack this, but like I don't think the film is saying that lesbian sexuality is not real sexuality because Ness does feel like a fully realized character who feels deeply for Juliet, and she has this line to Tromeo where he like comes to like rescue, or like he comes to visit Juliet and ends up rescuing her, where she says like, I know the way you feel about her, I feel that way too, but she feels that same way about you. Like basically like Ness knows that Juliet's in love with Tromeo and she like accepts that even though she's in love with Juliet herself. So I think they treat Ness with, they don't treat Ness in a way that feels dismissive to me. I'm less hesitant about that depiction as I went into the, you know, felt at the beginning of the film. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something so like, it's just so it's so interesting to me that Juliet doesn't start. Juliet is able to overcome her her fears of like male sexuality or like, you know, heteronormative sexuality, having sexual relationships with men. She is only able to overcome that after time spent with Tromeo. I don't know, and there's something going on with the fact that like whatever the fuck is going on with her father, and like he sees her as a sexual being when she is, but she isn't, and at least she isn't in the way that he thinks that she is, and like this trying to preserve of her purity and innocence. I feel like I'm rambling. What are your thoughts on this whole, all of this ness?
I I love how Juliet is written because I feel like she can be written badly very easily,
Mm,
considering culturally like how Romeo and Juliet is present in like the collective consciousness after 500 or so years. Like I feel like she can be very easily written as kind of dumb, maybe.
mm-hmm.
But the way she's written in this film, she's very complex and kind of arguably the main character.
I mean,
Maybe?
in my opinion, Romeo and Juliet, they're both the main
Yeah.
character. And in if it's a good adaptation, they take equal spotlight, and I think they do in this film.
Yeah. I feel like she's just maybe given a bit more depth than Romeo is in this film.
Yes, yes,
And
that is absolutely fair to say.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so okay. So this thing that this relationship that she has with her father, where he, there are multiple times when she has a nightmare that is a nightmare about this kind of fears of this kind of sexual experiences, and she
They
screams
involve
out.
like wet monsters and
Yeah.
rats.
Well, yeah, it's this is okay, this is why I said earlier the effects and and gore is very goopy. Everything's very like this penis monster. This penis monster is glistening, but not in a way that's like sexy. It's gross. Maybe it's sexy if you're into that, but like
No, it looks crazy.
yeah. And then yeah, the second dream that she has is she like suddenly like is like in writhing in pain and her stomach like swells in this really weird way and it like this
And
dream.
there's rats and maggots inside.
Yeah, well no, there's like popcorn that
Yeah.
Tromeo's eating. And then he like pulls out a rat and he's like, "It's a boy." Like it's insane. It is true nightmarish shit. But then her dad like she wakes up screaming. He comes in her room and he's like, "Oh, you've been like a naughty girl. You're having," and he like each time he thinks that like these beauty products like that she has in her room are like sex toys. Like he thinks like a curling iron is he's like, "Oh, this is a sex toy," and then he's like holds up like another like a foam roller,
a heatless curling thing.
Yeah, and he's like, "It's a butt plug." And he punishes her for her sexuality, but punishes her in a way that is incredibly sexual.
Yeah. And like the second floor of their apartment, there's this big room with a glass box, and he puts her in the glass box in like lingerie
and like bondage gear
and chains her inside the glass box.
Yeah, and he has this one line when he's locking her up that he's like, "Oh yeah, like he's like young girls need to behave themselves. All women should behave themselves." Like it's to me, I mean, it's such a good representation of this weird, awful, paradoxical like relationship that so much of like society, and I think American culture specifically, has with sexuality and female sexuality, of like this idea of needing to be pure and innocent that comes from a place where it's like, why because it just comes across as even more sexual sometimes. It's like, why are you wanting like young girls to be pure and like ugh. And it's her dad. It's real gross.
Yeah, I feel like a whole lot of this film is just taking a lot of the original material to its logical extreme and conclusion, and I feel like a lot of this Juliet scenes feel like a logical conclusion of what it probably would have realistically been like for her in 500 years ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I remember correctly, now it has been a while since I read through the play, but like it is absolutely true. There's stuff in this film about like, stuff like the nurse says and things like, "Oh, you got to be like, she's being married off." In play it's Paris, and in this film it's London, which took me a while to get. I was like, why are they calling him London? And then I'm like, oh, because it's another European city. Ha ha ha. Yeah, like, she's supposed to be like this innocent, to be a perfect bride, to marry off to Paris, and that is, her yeah, I think there is like this kind of punishment that comes from her parents and her father especially, of being like, she isn't supposed to act out, and she isn't supposed to be sexual until she's married, except she is a young woman, and that young women experience sexual pleasures and insights, and it is in some ways kind of like, even though this is a weird and twisted way they get about it, and like some of the practical effects that they use like later with the potion are like so wild, it is kind of beautiful that this adaptation has Juliet getting over her fear and falling in love with Tromeo and finding happiness in that.
I also really like that it's Tromeo the one who's obsessed with love and is the romantic one in the relationship.
Yeah, that is a good point. It does it makes them contrast further.
Yeah, and also complements his like dirtbaggy look really well.
Yeah, I will say he is kind of handsome.
Yeah,
there was good casting.
Yeah,
Benny Murray and Tromeo are all good looking men. Can't say the same about any of the other men in this film. Also, Ness, hottest fucking nurse I've ever seen. Like, literally, the nurse is usually like you know, a frumpy old woman, and they're like, yeah, let's give her 1,000 piercings.
Yeah, I love that everyone in this movie looks edgy in 90s.
Yeah. While we're talking about sexuality and the, I guess, taboo and overcoming it, we've got to talk about the ultimate twist of this film.
Before the which twist? Because I feel like there are various twists.
I mean the one where you're like, okay, so usually in Romeo and Juliet, Juliet fakes her death, then Romeo actually kills himself because he's all sad, and then Juliet kills herself, and it's all very sad, and it's about how, you know, love, and not even love destroys us, it's how expectations that keep us from loving destroy this, and it's all really sad. In this film, they both live, and the reason they both live is because they kind of do that weird thing where the potion turns Juliet into a cow or something.
Yeah,
and then
it does a body horror thing.
it's real weird.
She's
It's
like puking green, and then she looks like a cow in a wedding dress.
yeah, and then London jumps out a window because he's so horrified, and I guess dies. Like, and then Tromeo is like, "Oh, I'm gonna save you, Juliet," and then, you know, Capulet is not having a fan of it, and then they end up killing Capulet with the same things that she ends up, you know, beating him up with all the same beauty products.
The list. So first she burns him with the curling iron, then she puts bobby pins in his ears, then she stabs him with a nail file, then she puts a hair dryer on his mouth. Tromeo grabs some tampons and puts them up his nose.
It's literally what we were talking about last episode with the like using feminine products for like violence being camp.
And then she takes the TV in her broom and bashes it over his head. And then they go to the glass box room where Capulet is first is like, "Oh, you two follow me in the box," but
well,
then
he does say, like, before they kind of start attacking him, he says that he's, quote, gonna kill her and fuck her at the same time.
Yeah,
like, they make Capulet's sexual attraction to his own daughter very explicit.
Yeah,
which is then kind of ironic considering, well,
yeah. But then they lock him in the box, and apparently there's a plug underneath the box, so she plugs in the TV in his head, and that's what kills him.
Yeah, he electrocutes and his eyes bulge out, and it's really kind of horrifying. And but so yeah, then it seems like, okay, they've got their happy ending. Romeo and Juliet, they've survived in this adaptation. But they do survive with a twist, and that twist is that Monty Q is not actually Tromeo's dad. And the whole film I was thinking, damn, this is like,
Tromeo's been a Capulet all along.
well, the thing is that it seems like kind of weird casting that, like, Monty Q is this, like, black man and Tromeo looks very white, but I was just like, you know, he's light skinned. And then they're like, no, dude, he's like literally like, he's like, I'm not your dad. Like, why do you think I'm black? And it's like, oh, okay. So that weird, like, very first scene with the, like, other Capulets being weirdly incestuous is foreshadowing.
Yeah,
because turns out Romeo and Juliet are straight up siblings, and
they're like, we've been through too much to break up.
Yeah, so that's the end. That's the end of the film.
Well, the end is them having a little summer barbecue with their kids with prosthetics on their face.
Yeah, they're kids that have, like, other faces growing out of their face because they're like mutant kids because their kids are inbred. Fabiola, I had my head in my hands so many times while watching this film. It's just, okay, I think I'm having such a difficult time, like, wrapping my head around this and, like, not sure how to react to this is because one of the things that I am, like, Romeo and Juliet, one of the points is that, like, okay, yeah, there are these, like, our families have put these, like, expectations on us that are unreasonable, and they're so strict, and it's awful, and it's and and it's, you know, it makes loving each other like difficult when we should be able to love each other. Except that it kind of all breaks down when it's incest, because there are actual problems with incest. like in every other adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, if the parents are like, you two should not be together, it's like, there's no reason why you should say that. Like, you have these stupid rules and we should be able to love each other. Except in this film, it's like, you kids should not have kids, you're siblings, and they're like, fuck it. And it's like, what? That's why I'm like, it loses me at a certain point if you say this is the best adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, because it actually, like,
the third act is completely different. I will say that.
It's insane.
I just feel like they couldn't bear to kill off Tromeo and Juliet. So then they were like, well, what do we do now?
You let them have a happy ending! You don't have to give them kids with deformed faces! And like, look, I just want to say, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having birth defects, you know, that happens for many reasons. And
the kind of birth defects in this movie don't really happen in real life.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's so like absurd that it feels like, to a certain extent, mockery, you know? There's some not like PC stuff in this film. There's some like language, and it's from the
trauma
90s,
in the 90s.
Yeah, it's like gross and over the top in ways that aren't really appropriate and are not okay to kind of be referring to people that way. And I don't think it's all really that serious. So I'm not gonna it's not like I'm gonna criticize all of it to be like, you should know better, because it's like, it's just this irreverent tone of the whole film. But I am still, when I said at the top, like, this feels like a very like, there is an intentional messaging of the film, the story they're telling about defying sexual sexual taboos does feel relevant and thoughtful, and I just feel like they completely undermine their point by the end.
Yeah, I do feel like Troma Studios' priority is to be crazy.
I mean, this film is camp. Like, this is absolutely, like, sometimes I think we watch a film for this podcast and I'm like, oh yeah, like, we kind of need to discuss like why this film is camp, and almost like kind of justify it and make it fit into the definitions of camp. But this film,
I could show you any still image.
It's full of sleaze, it's full of just like over the top sexuality and just crazy practical
gore
effects.
Looks really fake and also like sticky.
Yeah,
the blood looks really sticky.
It's gooey. That's why I said gooey. It's I mean, when arms come off in ways that arms don't actually come off, like the way that their Tybalt character dies is insane.
Yeah, I noted down the 2 car sequences.
Yeah, wait, what was
the first one was with Sean Gunn.
Yeah, this Sammy character, right?
Yeah.
Hey, sissy, remember, when crossing the street, sidewalk safe, street dangerous. Sidewalk safe, street dangerous. Very good.
Okay, can I go now?
Yes, you can go. my God.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I literally had to look away for that. That was a little too gnarly because his head gets slashed open on a fire hydrant.
But he's still alive for a little while.
He tries
he's
to push
trying
the
to put it
skin-
back.
Oh, it was so gross. Yeah. They also I did write down, what did I write down? I said moments with kids are always interrupted by violence that the adults are horrified by and the kids love.
Get ready to die! Happens to everyone sooner or later. I hope he's left-handed.
It's another New York thing.
Look at that! Oh my God! No, Tromeo, you fucking bastard!
Ryan, you gotta work hard to get ahead in life.
I have it!
Found a peanut just now.
Just now I found a peanut just now. I cracked it open, cracked it.
Romeo, come on, little cousin, let's get the hell out of here.
I'm coming, Ben!
Oh my God!
Put it down. It's dirty.
The second car sequence when Tyrone, aka Tybalt's head gets like slashed through when it flies on top of this car of like the suburban family singing a little song, and the dad is played by James Gunn, and it lands on their windshield, and the parents are screaming at it, but the kids are laughing, and it just stays there on the car for a while. And then the car has a really crazy crash.
Yeah.
And then the family gets out of the car and the parents are horrified, but then the kids grab the head and play with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was watching that and I went, damn, I love Hereditary. I also then later when Juliet turns into a cow and I was like, damn, I love Sorry to Bother You. Though that's horses, but still. I also think that to me the campiest moment of special effects are like the sparkles.
Oh
that
yeah,
happen.
the sparkles are so pretty.
Well, it's
I was
so
like,
pretty.
there's something pretty in the movie.
Well, it's pretty, but like it happens right after. It happens when Juliet takes the potion, and then when the potion wears
To be
off.
like, ooh, magic.
Yeah,
This
ooh,
is magic thing.
It would be pretty if she didn't just vomit green foam. And then afterwards, okay, this is another thing that didn't like. I feel the politics of this as being like, I'm kind of uncomfortable. Like, what are they saying of the fact that not only does Juliet turn into a weird cow bovine thing, she also has like a penis.
It looks like an animal penis. It does not look like a human one.
Yeah.
Which kind of gives that joke leeway.
Yeah. I'm glad that London wasn't like into it. Because they could have gone that route too. Like they had incest. They could have had bestiality too.
And he's like weirdly obsessed with meat.
Yeah, he's like That's his
Which
business.
is like one of the reasons why he and Juliet are incompatible, because Juliet is vegetarian.
Which, that genius. What a great modern characterization for Juliet, because Juliet absolutely is a vegetarian. Also, okay, I wrote it down in my notes. I was like, was trying to keep track of all the things going on, and there's a lot of violence in the opening title or opening credits. And now I'm thinking about back on it, and I'm like, wait, there are scenes in that opening credits that aren't actually in the film.
Yeah.
So they're like introducing all these characters, and there's like one character like pulls ears off another character. And then it was like, oh, Juliet's oboe instructor or something. But I'm like, wait, do you actually see that guy?
I don't think so.
There's so much that's
also,
just like...
I love that the narrator is Lemmy from Motorhead.
Oh.
That's who he is.
Yeah. I was just paying attention to the fact that, I mean, there is a fair amount of, like, actual, like, Shakespearean language.
The iconic text is there.
Yeah. And
also text from other Shakespearean works, like there's stuff from Henry IV.
Which, okay. That is crazy. There is so much fourth wall breaking in this film that just kind of adds to the level of like how fake everything is, how theatrical, but not in the sense of like theatrical like it's a play, but theatrical in the sense it's all performative. Yeah, there's this moment where Capulet says a line from Henry. Wait, which Henry was it?
I think it's Henry IV.
Yeah, he says one of the Henry, and then he like literally looks directly at the camera and goes like, says the exact like act, scene, line, number. And then later he also quotes Ozymandias and then looks at the camera and is like...
And there's also just random parts of the original dialogue that do rhyme.
Yeah.
Like the scene where they're explaining to Tromeo how he's Juliet's brother, is all of it rhymes.
And I did like that a lot. I liked like the scene where Mercutio gets killed. And I think that is that the way the scene does go is that usually it's like, you know, Tybalt is like, oh, I want a word with you. And he's like, oh, I'll give you a word, and like lists a bunch of words and stuff. But in this version, it was all modern language. It was all modern insults, but they still like had a rhyme and meter to it that was really fun. I really like, there's a lot of like really well-written aspects to this film that do make it like a modern Shakespeare adaptation. Without sticking to the original text.
Yeah.
I do think the scenes that usually are, if I remember correctly, the scenes that they have that are the longest direct quotations from the original, you know, play are iconic scenes of dialogue between Romeo and Juliet. And I did really like how those moments were staged. They often had this kind of like faux night sky that appears behind them.
That's when they first meet with like the pilgrims sequence.
Yeah,
at the costume party.
Holy Palmer's kiss.
And then the camera spins around them.
And I thought that was like the way those lines were delivered. I'm like, these are good deliveries, and it's really sweet. And then, of course, that's then also juxtaposed with they kiss, and it's a sweet kiss, and then they start just making out, and it's so messy.
And Tromeo's in a cow costume.
Yeah, why is he in a cow costume?
I love the amount of cow motif in this, but I'm not sure why cow.
Me neither.
It's just a repeat animal in this entire film.
Yeah.
And the balcony, the like quote unquote balcony scene is in the glass box room.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know, even though it's so like absurd, and I would never have guessed that this is the way it's like Romeo and Juliet is depicted, it's still like in many of these scenes it fits, because it does feel like, you know, much in the same way that they have Mercutio delivering all these modern insults, having Romeo and Juliet give the Holy Palmer's Kiss monologue and then making out, it modernizes the meaning of the original play. It makes it, and so instead of it's just kind of this old English that you have to parse and understand, they are showing you directly, like, they're saying these lines and it means this. They want to fuck, you know?
And the hand upon her cheek, it's just a hand on her ass.
Yeah. Because there's, I mean, yeah, a lot of Shakespeare has this double meaning that you can just be like, it means this. And honestly,
like, again, this movie takes a bunch of things from the play to their logical extremity.
And like, probably like, it's not too far off from what Shakespeare meant. It's just shown very explicitly.
Yeah, I feel like a really natural fit for another Troma adaptation of Shakespeare would be Titus, because it's already really crazy.
Does Troma Productions do they still make stuff?
They still make stuff, they're just, the stuff that they currently make is just not as known, as iconic as their Toxic Avenger and other older stuff from the 80s and 90s. Also, I really liked the scene where Juliet is haunted by Mercutio and Tybalt and Sammy.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That just felt like a really nice addition, because I feel like the original text is like, it might be subtextually thinking about it, but it never addresses that like characters died for these two to be together.
Yeah.
And these hallucinations are directly confronting Juliet about this within her own mind.
Yeah, that is a good point. I also, yeah, there was a couple of other like modern interpretations of characters that were things that make sense, but is also like, okay, that's extreme. Like, they have like, God, it's so awful, but the freaking priest father being in, saying that he understands forbidden love, and you see him dancing around with a young boy.
Again, like, logical extreme.
Yeah. Though I don't even know if that's a thing in the original Shakespeare, of the priest saying that he understood that, but whatever. They made it. They put it in there. They also made the apothecary an opium den.
Yeah, because like, where would there be an apothecary in New York?
Yeah. I mean, fair. Yeah. The priest is such a crazy, like, they make him such a violent character.
Whose head did he bash in? One of the Capulet guys.
One of the Capulet thugs, yeah.
Yeah.
And they also, like, what is this? There's this scene, right, where, first of all, it's after when Romeo and Juliet get reunited again after the Tyrone murder. They have sex in one of the back rooms of the church that's full of Virgin Mary statues.
That shot is so cool.
And then when Juliet comes back in, like, the priest is on the phone and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know they were topless dancers, but they raised a lot of money for the church. And he's like surrounded by a bunch of like infographics on like the dangers of marriage, I think.
Oh yeah. Also, I love that Tromeo and Juliet got matching tattoos. That
would
be a thing that they would do.
Yeah, it absolutely would. Also, I like that Juliet's like smiling and grinning when she gets hers, and Tromeo is like crying.
There's a shot in that sequence that's genuinely haunting to me, because at one moment they're kissing, like, and the backdrop is the New York skyline, and right next to them are the Twin Towers. And I just, every time I see that shot, I go, oh.
I mean, the Twin Towers were an iconic part of the New York skyline.
Yeah, but in retrospect, it's a crazy shot.
Tromeo did 9/11. We're gonna be canceled for this episode.
It's just crazy to put Romeo and Juliet in front of the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
I really like the set design in this movie. Juliet's room is really cool because it looks 90s, but it also looks like a traditional princessy room.
Yeah. They do give her like a canopy bed, which is really cute.
It felt like classic Juliet, but with a 90s twist, and she has her big Shakespeare book, which she then hits her dad with.
Oh, I was gonna say it's not too long of a shot because it's like it's kind of like in transition while they're like running out of the room, but there is a image at one point where it's the Yale Shakespeare book that's on Juliet's floor covered in blood.
Yeah.
And that to me, I was like, oh, this is like an image of what this movie represents.
Yeah.
That they're like making the violence and the graphicness of Shakespeare, just putting it right out there.
Yeah. And also right after the epilogue, there's this one shot of Shakespeare essentially just laughing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's such a good way to end the movie.
Yeah.
Shakespeare just laughing.
They also, I mean, there's so much meta self-referential fourth wall breaking humor in this film, because also the porn that Romeo watches is Shakespeare like porn parodies.
Yeah. And the one he commits to watching is about love.
Yeah, it's As You Lick It, and then he's just like, true love option. He's like, oh yeah, I want to get married to you, baby. Oh yeah.
She has like a flower, but instead of doing like, does he love me, does he not, she's just like, I love you.
Yeah. I will say, so this is a little bit off topic, but it is on topic. I was telling you, Fabiola, before we were recording, or last time when we were recording, that I've been taking daily videos, and sometimes I try to take videos of the films that I'm watching to like, usually I try to like film it of the title sequence. And so I did that for watching this film. I turned on my camera. I'm like, oh, I'm seeing the director's name. The title's probably about to come on screen. And it said what came on screen was that hanging squirrel. And so I have a video of like me filming this. And then you just hear me go, what the fuck, in the background. Because that was not the opening shot I was expecting.
Yeah, making that the opening shot, it feels very deliberate.
Yeah.
The opening shot of a Romeo and Juliet adaptation, a hanging squirrel.
I mean, and then it is kind of sweet that they were really upset about it. Like, they're like Murray's like, why did you kill that squirrel? And Benny's like, well, you gave them a pigeon, a rotting pigeon. He's like, the pigeon was already dead. I didn't kill the pigeon. Why did they kill that squirrel?
Also, did you stay through the credits?
I did, and I did that because I had seen you tweet the screenshot of the credits, and so I was like, I gotta actually make sure I watch these, and it is gold.
Yeah.
What is your favorite part of the credits?
Oh, whenever the credits guy is just saying like, this is a lonely job and I'm like stuck here and no one appreciates it, and someone please read these, and also if anyone wants to go out with me, call this number.
Yeah, I do think that's fun. My favorite is all of the puns that they do, where they kind of have like, oh, this normal line of normal credit roll, and then they do kind of plays on that following it. And I think it's like when they have the kind of like, oh, sound recordist, sound mixer, I wrote down they have one of it's listed sound mental condition, and then the credit for it is no one on this film.
Like, that's real. They know.
And then later it's like,
they know,
you know,
this is crazy.
later they're like, oh, it's like, you know, pre-production, pre-mixing, and then it's like pre-pubescent coordination or something like that. And then it says everyone on this film. So yeah, they know.
Yeah, I just remembered one that was crediting someone that did not make it into the final film, and it's guy who got pissed off sitting around all day waiting to do a nude scene, and then we caught him out of the film.
Well, they also just have actors in this film, and then they also have actors who don't appear in this film, and it's like Sandra Bullock, John Travolta. They're having fun.
Yeah.
They had fun.
Yeah. Is there anything we want to end on?
Oh, well, I'll say this. Also, another thing. At the very, very end of the credits all finish rolling, you just hear a voice that says, hey, now I don't have to read the play. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I would disagree, but,
The last act is completely different.
yeah. It certainly fills a hole of, I should not have used that phrase. It certainly feels a niche
for this movie. It makes sense for this movie.
It certainly fills a niche of Romeo and Juliet adaptations, and I mean, also holes are filled.
Yeah, I feel like there should be more crazy Shakespeare adaptations.
I mean, you can do it. It's public domain. Anyone can do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna make Titus even crazier.
I can't wait to see it, even though I may be horrified at some points while watching. It's Giving Camp, hosted by Saffron, Hefta-Gaub,
and Fabiola Liaño.
Our theme music is written by Harrison Lurie.
And the podcast is edited by Fabiola Liaño.
Follow us on Patreon. Support us on Patreon.
On Instagram, it's Giving Camp Pod. And on Twitter, it's Giving Camp Pod. Without it's. We're on Patreon at It's Giving Camp Pod, and shout out to our patron, Nicole Venito.